Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, and we are the Astrology Star Sisters. Today, talking about the planets stationing in May of 2026. And my star sister today joining me is Madam Simon. Welcome, Simon. How are you today?
Great, Liz. How are you?
Good, good. The weather's a little cooler today, but it was certainly warm the last few days, that's for sure. So, Madam Simon is an archetypal astrologer, tarot reader, and visionary artist. Your website is iconalchemy.com. I'm an astrologer, author, intuitive, and tarot reader also, and my website is alightpath.com, and you can reach us through our websites. So, planet stationing retrograde or direct for the month of May is on the 6th. Pluto will station retrograde. And Simon is sharing a piece of her art with us, so I'm going to let her tell us about it.
Thank you, Liz. This is a digital collage uh, based entirely in either photos I've taken or you can see an antique Greek stamp in the background there. Um, I actually made this, I think, a couple of years ago, uh, but specifically for something Plutonian. So I thought it would be appropriate today.
Well, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. So Pluto stations retrograde on May 6th at 8:35 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and 11:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this chart that I'm showing here is for Seattle, Washington. So Pluto is in the 8th house for the West Coast of the United States. Do you want to make any comments before I move on to the next slide? Okay, Pluto's station will be from May 6th through October 15th. And Simon, will you share some things about Pluto with us?
Sure. Pluto relates to things that are hidden or below the surface of things. It is considered to be the modern or transcendental ruler of Scorpio. The traditional ruler of Scorpio is Mars. Um, and both Pluto and Mars have some affinity in terms of willpower. You see this keyword, these keywords starting out with spiritual will for Pluto. But I would also say collective will, we can sometimes see with Pluto. And in particular, I associate Pluto with institutional will, institutional power. Okay. Pluto is associated with the death and rebirth cycle, with transmutation, transformation, right? Power, courage, survival, determination, intensity, and resilience. Some of the cautions around Pluto are being controlling, oppressive, obsession, compulsion, desperation, hopelessness, betrayal, taboos, the swamp, swampiness, decay in general. You will often hear me say in relation to Pluto that it shows where things need to be composted.
Thank you. Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is in the fixed modality. It's about hold, maintain, endure, middle of the season. Traditionally ruled by Saturn, and the modern ruler is Uranus. It's of the air element, adaptable, thoughtful, communicative, logical, and social. The mantra is I know. And some keywords are abstract, analytical, intelligent, dispassionate, the big picture, scientific, eccentric, rebel, groups, causes, evolution, and some cautions are emotionlessness, standoffish, disassociative, and argumentative. Would you like to add anything, Simon?
Aquarius kind of can show two sides of the social coin. On one hand, it can be really concerned with society, with systems, with what the group needs. But on the other hand, there can be that tendency to become standoffish or disassociative because it, because Aquarius is so concerned with those structures, with those systems, and at the same time, we've got that mantra of I know, we've got that potential for stubbornness that we see with any fixed sign, then Aquarius can sometimes say, you know what, I know better than the group, which to me, like don't discount that possibility. It's just that sometimes there can be friction because of that.
Thank you. So some aspects to Pluto in this Pluto stationing retrograde, it's conjoins Juno, sextile Neptune and Pallas Athena, trine Uranus, and square Mercury. Which one would you like to talk about first, or talk about a few of them?
Well, we'll start with the conjunction to Juno. So Juno, of course, is the queen of heaven, the wife of Jupiter, and is associated with our covenant relationships, the relationships where we've made promises to each other. So certainly that would be, spousal relationships, but also institutional relationships. Anything where more hinges on the relationship than just, whether we get along and have a good time. Right. And Juno is concerned about keeping the fabric of society together. Okay. The reason that she's associated with these institutional relationships, with covenant partnerships, is because so many other things can hinge on them, right? She is associated with childbirth, okay, and the situation that children find themselves in is often going to be determined, highly affected by what are the institutional relationships going on around them, right? So we can see that interconnectedness there. Juno wants to make sure that society doesn't come tumbling apart because we broke all our promises to each other.
Well, I would assume with Pluto retrograde and conjoin that Juno, that we might be reviewing some of our relationships or our commitment or our oaths to people and things. So this would be, when Pluto's retrograde, we might be reviewing all that.
Right. But since Pluto is specifically dealing with power dynamics, but also with showing us what is rotten, what is corrupt, what is overripe, what needs to be transformed, what needs to be composted, like I said before. Pluto with Juno, then, as Pluto is stationing retrograde, is going to emphasize all those Plutonian things, but with that twist of how does this impact our promises, our commitments, our institutionalized relationships. And so, yes, that can certainly have an impact on marriages or other kinds of covenant partnerships, right? Like business partnerships, for example. Okay. But since Pluto is generational, an outer planet that moves slowly, it also is likely to have an impact on what's going on underneath the surface, behind the scenes, in institutions. And, where do those institutions keep their commitments and where do they fail? I do feel like when Pluto is retrograde, some of that stuff goes deeper, but is more hidden, right? And so some of the things, I mean, we've certainly seen lots of examples of institutional corruption in recent years, but I do feel like some of that stuff we may find obscured while Pluto is retrograde, and it may not come back to the surface until Pluto stations direct. Which doesn't mean that we can't address some of these things, but this is a time when we're looking at Pluto retrograde, this is a time to pay attention to our internal relationships with these things. Okay. If we suspect that something is rotten in Denmark, as they say, right? If we suspect that something is going wrong within our institutionalized relationships, this is a time to examine our own part in it. Okay. And to get a better sense of where we feel like we do or do not have power to advocate for ourselves, to alter the situation, to clean things up, to renegotiate contracts, to renegotiate partnerships. Just because something has gone wrong doesn't mean it can't be rectified, but we can't be looking at, well, that's everybody else's problem. Right? When Pluto is retrograde, a lot of that comes home in terms of what is our own part in the situation. Okay. So, of course, Pluto is continuing to be in the minor grand trine that has been going on between all three of the outer planets. And during this retrograde, it's actually Pluto will go back a degree or two, and then Neptune and Uranus are going to move forward. So the orb between all three is going to get tighter. And it's all going to kind of come to a head in, I believe, late July, early August, somewhere around there, when Jupiter will, by that time, have moved up to 4 degrees of Leo. And we're going to get a cradle configuration of all three of the outer planets with Jupiter. So that should be something. All three of these generational slow-moving planets with the bigness and the pizzazz of Jupiter. And Jupiter in Leo is showy, right? That's not a quiet Jupiter.
And we'll be back with a show with the Cosmic Connections team to talk about all that, probably late June or very early July. So that's something to look forward to in the future.
Yep. And so then the last thing I want to mention here before we move on to the next slide is that, we're recording this on the day of Pluto's station, and Mercury squared off against Pluto just yesterday. And so that really emphasizes how we think about Plutonian subjects. In particular, it can give us a desire to go deeper, to get to the bottom of a mystery. But because it's a square, what is motivating that may feel a little challenging. Like it's because we have to, not because we want to. Right? There can be that kind of obsessive, compulsive experience of the Mercury and Pluto themes. For some of us who are perhaps prone to hyperfixation, we can get really into a particular subject under this kind of an influence. And yes, I went down some rabbit holes yesterday for that reason, right? But I find this interesting as, the beginning of this Pluto retrograde. Anytime we're looking at one of these, ingress charts, station charts, inception charts, we're not just looking at that singular moment in time. We are also looking at the reverberations of that moment through a related period, in this case, throughout the time of the retrograde. And so I suspect that this particular retrograde is going to have more emphasis on how we think, and in particular, how we think about our material resources, since Mercury is in Taurus there. It should be noted that during that Mercury square, there was a whole lot of trans-Neptunian object and centaur interaction with Venus, who rules Taurus. Okay. And Venus at the time was sextile to Eros, the asteroid Eros, who is currently in Leo, and also sextile to the trans-Neptunian object Leiakunua. I think I've got it right. I've been working on my pronunciation of that anyway. And that sextile with her and that TNO formed the base of a yod to the centaur Elatus in Scorpio. And Elatus relates to communication. Venus was also forming a trine with the binary trans-Neptunian objects Logos Zoe, and Logos literally means word. Okay, so again, relates to communication. And this combination of all of these, I very much felt like this pattern, or actually several overlapping configurations, were really relating to how do we communicate within relationships, especially when we need to go deeper, when we need to discuss important things, but also especially love relationships, since Eros is there. Okay, sexual interactions, all of that. And so I find that very telling with this conjunction, going back to the beginning of this, with this conjunction with Juno and the square to Mercury. We see multiple areas of emphasis on communication within relationships, the willingness to go deeper in our discussions, the willingness to talk about difficult or taboo subjects, and you know, what's our level of commitment? What are our promises that we are willing to keep, or are we going to break some? Do some need to be broken? Right? You know, recognizing that there will be consequences for doing so. But still, I really feel like the next 5 months, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on that, because there's so much emphasis on it in this chart.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing the trans-Neptunian planets with us. So we have some aspect patterns, and Simon had mentioned the minor grand trine between Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Pallas Athena is right there next to Neptune. And then we have a yod, Pluto being the apex of that, and Hygeia in the south node pointing to that, and then they have a sextile between them. So go ahead.
Right. So that yod, you know, the south node is kind of where we are coming from. Okay, within the arc of our karma, it goes from the south node to the north node. The south node can be what we're leaving behind, but it can also be where we are very comfortable, where we are so adept at something that it's second nature to us, right? We've gotten very good at, in the case of a south node in Virgo, of being both logical and practical, applying an attention to detail. Again, I feel like that goes back to the Mercury-Pluto square. Mercury rules Virgo. And so That suggests then this attention to detail, particularly when it comes to our material resources, our habits, our health. Remember, part of our material resources is our bodies, okay? And our immediate surroundings as well, okay? Our homes and the objects within them. Our food, Virgo is associated with agriculture, right? And so that sextile from that south node to Aia then is going to, very much emphasize health. Okay. And since Aia is in Cancer, then we're looking at kind of the health of home, the health of what is immediate around us. Cancer also rules the stomach, as I recall, right? And
Yes.
so therefore, again, we got that emphasis on what we eat. Okay. But also when we're looking at the South Node, we can be looking at not only where have we been comfortable, but also, okay, what have we outgrown? What is it time to let go of? Okay. And we can sometimes see loss with South Node transits. Do keep in mind that sometimes even when it is important for us to be willing to let go of certain things or to change our habits, Virgo is very concerned with habits, okay, that it doesn't necessarily mean that we're happy and comfortable about it, right? Because the South Node is where we're comfortable, and here moving away from that can feel a little scary and uncomfortable, even if it's absolutely the right thing for us. Okay. So that all then creates this pressure that is pointing at that Pluto there. Okay. And that gives us impetus to do the deep inner psychological work that we need to do in order to make some transformations, both in our lives personally and, since it's in Aquarius, societally. Now, getting everybody to agree about what to transform, that's another matter. But since Pluto is part of that minor grand trine with all three of these generational planets, all three of these outer planets connected together, then there really is a lot of impetus for societal change here, especially with Pluto trine Uranus. And then Neptune there is very much concerned with, what is our vision for change, right? Note that Neptune is conjoining Pallas Athena there. So our vision, our spiritual impetus, okay, our hopes and dreams and illusions and delusions are there, influencing our ability to make plans, because Pallas is very much about planning and strategic thinking. There is also a trans-Neptunian object there. It's actually a binary, Bora Sisi Pabu, which relates to the lies we willingly tell ourselves, the fantasies that we know are fantasies, but we still hold them dear. Okay. They are sextile to the trans-Neptunian object Iran, who also stations retrograde this week, if I remember correctly, and the centaur Hylanum, and they are both at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So they're part of that little cluster there with our Pluto and Juno. Okay. Iran is another underworld deity. Hylanum has can have a sense of victimization about her. And so there is this real need to pay attention to where we may be overreacting to feelings of helplessness. She is the reminder within this context to not get despairing about the things that we don't know how to change. Um, because keep in mind, there's so much big stuff going on, so much societal, so much systemic change going on. It's not that we shouldn't try to make changes, but some of those changes may not be up to us as individuals. Um, there's been so much emphasis lately in the astrology about this, on one hand, with that Aries stellium that's been going on, the power of the individual, the what defines an individual, and yet there's also been a lot of emphasis on community, on family, on larger groups, both with those outer planets and with Jupiter, who is hanging out there in Cancer. You will note there is a separating square from Mars in Aries there. Okay. And so again, we're looking at that kind of this dichotomy between individual will, which Mars relates to, and Jupiter, which is groups, right? And so even though there's not a direct connection between them, that's why we don't see, an aspect showing here on this chart with Pluto aspects, because neither one of them is actually aspecting Pluto. Nonetheless, again, we see a repetition of themes. Okay. And in that case, I would, connect that to the theme of will, which Pluto very much emphasizes, and the theme of what is good for society, what is good for the groups, what is good for our partnerships, what is good for our interactions with other human beings. Okay. When you boil it all down. So yeah, there's this, I would say the most important thing for us to be paying attention to right now is how can we, on an individual level, pay attention to the power dynamics at work in our relationships, both our one-on-one relationships, our family relationships, and our relationships with the larger group. How are we meeting the moment within those contexts, and where may we need to work on our habits, let go of some old behaviors, and try to come up with a healthier way of relating that in turn is going to have an impact on others around us, right?
Thank you, Simon. That was great. And I think, yeah. So I want to thank Simon for you joining me today. And I want to thank all those that have been watching live and all those that come back and watch at a future time. We appreciate your support. And Simon's going to share about her Patreon page now.
So I create art that is based in astrology and tarot and dreams and stuff like that. But I really, as of, I don't know, the past few years, I've just really gone down the rabbit hole of every piece of art I create has some astrological component. And so I share that artwork and some of my process there, as well as write about astrological transits that are connected to the art that I'm making. And I do some custom astrological art for my patrons on Patreon. So if that sounds like something that would be interesting to you, I'd love to see you over there. Also, I am a consulting astrologer like Liz is, and tarot reader. And if you are interested in scheduling a consultation, my website is iconalchemy.com.
And like Simon mentioned, I do consultations in person and on Zoom. I have a newsletter, and you're watching my YouTube channel, so we appreciate you subscribing and liking and leaving us comments. And there's a good amount of shows in the archives, and 1 or 2 shows come out each week. So we look forward to seeing you again in the future soon. And our next show will be the Taurus new moon, and that will be with Simon and myself. And I want to thank our sponsor, Astro Peregrine Software, an astrology software for Mac and Windows. And to find out more information, you can go to astroperegrine.com. And thank you, Simon, for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you on. And we will be back in a few days to do the new moon. I don't remember what day we decided, but I know it's not too many days out. So, and we're going to say goodbye for now. So, thank you.